A lonely little girl in a wheelchair shows up at a luxury car showroom, staring at the fanciest car, but she's not there to buy it. She's waiting for the man who owns it. When the millionaire finally arrives, she looks up and asks one question that silences the entire room. "Where can I buy a dad?" He laughs at first, until he learns why she asked. And that answer? It shatters him. Turns out, she's not just any girl, she's connected to a secret he buried long ago. One he thought would never come back. Before starting the story, make sure to subscribe the channel so that you don't miss any update in future. The showroom went silent when the little girl rolled in and asked the millionaire, "Where can I buy a dad?" Everyone froze. The guards didn't know whether to stop her. The assistant gasped. The millionaire raised an eyebrow. What kind of question was that? And more importantly, who was this little girl? And why was she asking him? It was just another afternoon at Hamilton Motors, the most luxurious car showroom in the city. Millionaires came to show off. Billionaires came to compete. But on that day, none of them mattered. Because a tiny girl in a blue wheelchair quietly rolled through the glass doors, alone. Her clothes were faded, her shoes worn out, but her eyes? Sharp, focused, curious. She looked around, scanning the place like she'd been there before. Her gaze stopped at the center, the silver Maserati MC20. Next to it, a plaque. Property of Mr. Daniel Rowe, CEO. She rolled closer, carefully, avoiding the velvet ropes. The receptionist was already on the phone. "Security, we have a situation." But before anyone could reach her, she did something no one expected. She placed a small, handwritten envelope under the windshield wiper of the Maserati, then turned to the manager and asked, "Excuse me, when does Mr. Rowe usually come here?" The manager blinked, confused. He visits sometimes." "Why?" She didn't answer. She just looked down at her lap and whispered, "I'll wait." And she did. 2 hours passed. 3. The receptionist offered her water. She refused. She just sat there, staring at the car, like she was waiting for something bigger than anyone could understand. At exactly 5:17 p.m., Daniel Rowe walked in. Tall, impeccably dressed, commanding. Everyone turned. And that's when she rolled forward, stopped just a few feet from him. She looked up, voice trembling. "Where can I buy a dad?" Time froze. Even Daniel's confident smirk slipped. He laughed awkwardly. "Excuse me, what?" She repeated herself. Slower this time. "Where can I buy a dad?" Everyone stared. The assistants didn't move. Even the security guard lowered his walkie. Daniel knelt down, unsure whether this was a prank, a test, or something worse. "Why would you ask something like that?" he said gently. Her eyes welled up. She reached into her pocket, pulled out a tiny, crumpled wad of cash, coins, and a few wrinkled bills. "I don't know how much a dad costs," she said, "but this is all I have. Can you help me? You look rich." Daniel didn't know what to say. Something about her eyes, they felt familiar. He looked over at the envelope she'd placed under his car's wiper. He picked it up, opened it. Inside, a child's drawing. A stick figure of a man holding a little girl's hand. Underneath, "Maybe if I had a dad, Mommy wouldn't be in the hospital." Daniel's hands trembled. He looked at her again. "What happened to your mom?" The girl looked down. She collapsed. The doctor said she was tired and hungry and sad, all the time. And now, she doesn't wake up. That's when Daniel heard something he hadn't heard in 20 years. Her last name, Melody Carter. He stumbled backward. His breath caught. Melody Carter. He whispered it like a ghost. He knew that name. That was the name of the woman he once left behind. The only woman who ever really loved him before he had money, before he became who he is. And now, standing in front of him, was her daughter? His knees nearly gave out. He looked at the girl. "What's your name?" She replied softly. "Hope. Mommy named me that, 'cause she said I was her only reason to live." Daniel dropped to one knee. His mind raced. Was this really happening? Could this little girl be his? He whispered again, this time to himself. "Hope." And she asked again. Not like a stranger this time. but like someone broken open. "Please, just tell me, where do I buy a dad?" Daniel didn't answer right away. He couldn't. His throat was dry, and his mind was drowning in old memories. Hope looked up at him with those wide, pleading eyes that looked too familiar. Like echoes of a past he tried to bury under layers of money, success, and guilt. He reached out, almost afraid to touch her. "How old are you?" he asked quietly. "7," she whispered. Daniel's heart skipped. 7. Exactly the number of years since he'd last seen Melody. He felt a cold weight settling on his chest. "Do you live nearby?" Hope shook her head. "No, we don't really live anywhere." Mommy said, "Homes need money." She hesitated, then added, "We sleep in shelters. Or when it rains, sometimes in the bus station." But Mommy said one day she'd buy us a real home and maybe a dad. She paused. But she never got the chance. Daniel's breath caught again. Her voice was soft, but each word hit him like a hammer. He looked around. The staff was still frozen, watching. He stood up sharply. "Get my car." The manager blinked. "Yes, sir?" "I said get my car. Now." Hope's eyes widened. "Are you going to take me to buy one?" Daniel knelt again, shook his head. "No, sweetheart. There's no place to buy dads." He gently picked her up, folding the wheelchair and placing it in the back of his Maserati. She sat in the passenger seat, small and silent. And as the car purred to life, Hope asked one more thing. "Are you going to leave, like all the others?" Daniel didn't reply. His grip on the steering wheel tightened. Inside, he was unraveling. As the city lights passed them by, memories came flooding back, vivid, painful. Melody at the coffee shop, scribbling poetry on napkins. Her laughter in the rain. The day she told him she was pregnant, and he walked away, scared, angry, not ready. He'd just landed his first $1 million deal. He told himself he didn't need distractions. He told her to disappear. And she did. He never heard from her again. Until now. Until Hope. When they arrived at the hospital, the nurse recognized Hope immediately. "She comes every night," the nurse said softly. "She just sits by her mother's bed. Doesn't speak to anyone. Won't leave until we ask her." Daniel followed behind, silent. When he entered the room and saw Melody, the air left his lungs. She was so thin. Pale. Tubes in her arms. Eyes closed, unmoving. But she was still her. Even now, she was her. Hope climbed into the chair beside her bed, holding her hand like she'd done 1,000 times before. "She doesn't talk much anymore," Hope said. "But sometimes. I think she hears me." Daniel stood at the foot of the bed, not knowing if he had the right to come closer. Hope looked up. "Do you know her?" He nodded slowly. "Yes. I knew her a long time ago." She studied his face. "Did you love her?" The question came like a dagger. He opened his mouth, but no words came. Hope turned back to her mother, whispering, "I think she loved you. Even when she cried. Even when we were hungry. She never said your name, but sometimes when she dreamed, she'd say, 'Come back.' I think she meant you." Daniel sat down slowly, his head in his hands. The room was too quiet. His thoughts too loud. He'd spent years chasing power. Cars. Mansions. Deals. He told himself that love was a distraction. That he'd done the right thing. But now, the consequences were staring back at him in a hospital bed. And a little girl who just wanted a father. The doctor came in quietly. "She's stable, but weak. Her body's shutting down from malnutrition and stress. She's been giving all her food to the girl. Said she'd rather Hope eat than her." Daniel looked at him sharply. "What does she need?" The doctor sighed. "A miracle. Or a lot of care. Weeks of recovery. Emotional support. Rest. Safety." Daniel stood up, determination rising. "Then give her everything. I'll cover it all." Hope blinked. "But we don't have insurance." "You do now," he said, looking at her. She tilted her head. "Why would you help us?" He paused, then knelt again, meeting her eyes. "Because I think I might be the reason you needed help in the first place." She stared at him, and for the first time, her voice trembled. "Are you my daddy?" The words hung in the air like broken glass. Daniel didn't answer immediately. Instead, he stood, walked to Melody's side, and gently held her hand. "I don't know what I am," he whispered, "but I know what I want to be. If you'll let me." Hope clutched her stuffed bunny tighter, her voice barely a whisper. Everyone else said no. Daniel looked at her, his voice shaking now too. "I won't." Silence again. Then Hope did something she hadn't done in a long time. She smiled. Just a little. Just enough. Daniel sat beside her, one hand on Melody's, one gently resting near Hope's. The three of them, a man crushed by his past, a woman fighting for her life, and a child who only wanted a father, sat in that small hospital room like the world outside had stopped spinning. But inside? Inside, something had just started. The news broke within 24 hours. Billionaire CEO Daniel Rosine leaving hospital with mysterious girl in wheelchair. Who is the child Daniel's hiding? Secret love child or publicity stunt? The headlines exploded. Cameras swarmed the gates of Hamilton Motors. Drones hovered outside the hospital. Reporters hunted for answers. But inside room 403, all that mattered was the soft sound of Melody's heartbeat and the little girl sleeping in a chair, her fingers curled tightly around Daniel's coat. Daniel hadn't left the room since the night before. He hadn't checked his phone. He hadn't answered his assistant. His world, once so loud, was now quiet. Fragile. Hope stirred awake. She blinked up at him and rubbed her eyes. "You're still here." Daniel nodded, softly smiling. "Where else would I be?" She didn't say anything, but her face said enough. She'd gotten used to people disappearing. She got used to empty chairs. Daniel turned back toward Melody. Her face was pale, but less hollow now. The four fluids were working. Her body had begun its slow recovery. But her mind? It was still far away. He leaned in, brushing a strand of hair from her forehead. "I don't know if you can hear me," he whispered, "but I'm sorry. For everything. I should have been there. I should have fought for us. For her." His voice cracked. "And I know sorry doesn't fix anything. But I swear to you, I'm going to try." Hope watched quietly, not interrupting. Her tiny fingers held that same crumpled drawing, the stick figure Dad holding her hand. She'd drawn it 100 times before. But now, she was afraid to draw it again. What if he left too? Later that morning, a nurse entered with a quiet smile. "Sir, your assistant is outside." He said it's urgent. Daniel sighed and stepped out into the hallway. Jeremy, his longtime assistant, was pacing nervously. "Daniel, finally. You've got to come back. The board is losing it. Investors are panicking. You've got press outside the company HQ, press outside your penthouse, even outside your mom's old house. Everyone's asking, who is the girl?" Daniel stayed quiet. Jeremy lowered his voice. "Look, if this is some charity thing, fine. We'll spin it. But if this is personal..." "It is," Daniel said flatly. Jeremy's mouth opened, then closed. Daniel stepped closer. "She's mine, Jeremy." Silence. "I think," Daniel added, "I left someone behind years ago. And now, I'm trying to make it right." Jeremy swallowed hard. "Okay, but what about the company? The board is threatening a vote of no confidence. If you don't show up today, you could lose everything." Daniel looked past him, through the tiny window on the hospital room door. Hope was feeding her bunny a cracker and humming softly to Melody, who still hadn't woken up. Daniel spoke without looking away. "Then let them take it." Jeremy blinked. "You're serious? I built all this to fill a hole in my life. And now I realize, nothing I built matters if I let her disappear too." "But Daniel..." "Enough." He turned back to him. "Tell the board. I'm done playing the billionaire they want me to be. I'm going to be the man I should have been 7 years ago." And with that, he walked back into the room and closed the door. Hope looked up. "Was that your boss?" He chuckled. "Kind of." She tilted her head. "Did you get fired?" He sat beside her, amused. "Sort of." She nodded seriously. "That's okay. Dads don't need jobs. They just need hugs." Daniel's smile faded. "I think I'm going to need a few of those." Hope opened her arms wide. He pulled her gently into his chest, resting his chin on her head. It felt like the first real thing in years. Later that evening, something changed. Melody's fingers twitched. Hope gasped, "Mommy?" Daniel leaned in fast. "Melody? Can you hear me?" Her eyelids fluttered. Her lips moved. "Hope?" "Yes, Mommy. I'm here." Melody's eyes finally opened, glassy and slow. And the first face she saw was Daniel's. She froze, tried to sit up, panic in her eyes. "Sure, it's okay," Daniel said softly. "You're safe. You're in the hospital. Hope is okay." Melody stared at him like she'd seen a ghost. Her voice came out hoarse, like it hadn't been used in years. "Why are you here?" Daniel swallowed. "Because I should have never left." Tears sprang to her eyes immediately. "You don't get to say that now." "I know, but I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm asking for a second chance." She looked away. "You think showing up changes anything?" "No," he whispered. "But I think being here now is better than disappearing again." Melody's shoulders trembled. Her strength wasn't there, but her pain was. "I needed you," she said through clenched teeth. She needed you. "And you weren't there." Daniel nodded, eyes wet. "You're right. And I will spend every day trying to undo that." Hope crawled up gently on the bed, holding her mother's hand. "Mommy," he stayed. Melody looked down at her daughter. Her everything. And in that moment, something cracked in her anger. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But maybe the beginning of healing. Daniel pulled a folded paper from his pocket, the drawing Hope had made. "I don't know what kind of father I'll be," he said. "But if she'll have me, I want to try." Melody stared at the paper, then at her daughter's tired face. Hope nodded. "I think he's already trying." Melody's lips trembled. And then, slowly, painfully, she reached out her hand. Not just to Daniel, but to the second chance they never thought they'd get. 3 days later, the hospital discharged Melody. Not because she was fully healed, but because she no longer needed machines to breathe. She had something stronger now. Hope. And the man who once walked away, now walking beside her every step. Daniel didn't leave their side. Not once. He bought new clothes for Hope, comfortable shoes for Melody, even brought a nurse to stay at the small hotel suite he turned into a temporary home for them. But it wasn't the gifts that mattered. It was the way Hope laughed again. It was the way Melody finally slept, not from exhaustion, but peace. Still, peace has a way of testing you. It came knocking the next morning, disguised as the past. Daniel's phone rang. The number was familiar. It was Gregory, the man Daniel once partnered with to build the foundation of his billion-dollar empire. He answered. "Daniel," Gregory said sharply, "the press won't drop this. You're trending on every platform. Board members are screaming for your head." Daniel sat down on the edge of the hotel sofa. "I told you. I'm stepping back." Gregory's voice tightened. "You're not just stepping back. You're throwing your life away." "For what? A woman you left? A kid you didn't even know existed?" Daniel's fingers gripped the phone tighter. "I'm not throwing my life away," he replied. "I'm finally starting to live it." Gregory scoffed. "You think this girl needs a dad who gave up the world for her? She needs stability, power, money." Hope's laughter rang in the background. Daniel stood up, walked to the balcony, and looked out at the sunrise. He hadn't watched a sunrise in years. "She doesn't need a man with power," Daniel said. "She needs a man who stays." Gregory didn't reply. But Daniel could hear it, the disbelief. The silence of someone who never understood what mattered. He hung up. When he stepped back inside, Hope was building a Lego castle on the coffee table. She looked up, eyes bright. "Do you want to help me?" Daniel smiled. "Of course." She handed him a blue block. "You build the roof. I'll do the windows." And, just like that, the billionaire was back on the floor, crawling across carpet, building imaginary castles with a little girl who taught him more about life than 1,000 board meetings ever could. Melody watched from the couch, a soft smile tugging at her lips. "You're not who I remembered," she said. Daniel looked up. "I'm not who I used to be," he said honestly. She nodded slowly. "I still don't know if I can forgive you." "I don't expect that," he said. "I just want to earn it." Later that night, as Hope slept between them, Hugging her stuffed bunny tighter than ever, Melody whispered into the dark. She used to cry in her sleep. Every night, Daniel's heart ached. She doesn't anymore. Melody looked at him. Neither do I. Days turned into a week. And then the call came. Not from a lawyer. Not from a reporter. From a social worker. We received an anonymous tip, the voice said. A concern that the child is in an unsafe environment. Daniel's face dropped. What? We're required to follow up. There's a complaint filed that you're using the child for media manipulation, that the mother is still unstable, and that you're not the biological father. Daniel's world spun. I'm taking care of them, he said firmly. She's safe with me. We'll be sending someone to evaluate the situation, the social worker replied. Please have documentation ready. Daniel hung up, furious. It was Gregory. It had to be. He couldn't stand losing. And now he was using the system to fight dirty. Daniel turned to Melody, his voice shaking. They might try to take her away. Melody froze. What? They're questioning everything. Our living situation. My role. Your health. Melody's eyes filled with fear. Her hands trembled. She looked at her daughter sleeping peacefully and broke. I can't lose her, she whispered. I can't. Daniel walked over, took her hand. You won't. We're not even married, she said desperately. You're not even listed as her. I'll fix it. The next day, Daniel didn't go to a press conference. He didn't return to the boardroom. He went to a courtroom. Not with a team of lawyers. Just him. He signed every paper. He stood before a judge. He swore to provide care, stability, education, emotional support, a future. He didn't need a DNA test. He didn't need proof. He knew what she was. She was his daughter, not by blood, but by choice, by heart. And as the judge signed the paper, Hope ran into the room and leapt into his arms. You're my real dad now, she asked. Daniel kissed her forehead. I always was. Melody stood behind them, tears streaming down her cheeks. And for the first time since he left her all those years ago, she whispered, thank you. But Hope wasn't done. She looked up at them both, mischief in her eyes. Does this mean we can all live in the castle now? Daniel laughed. Well, we might have to build it first. Hope grinned. That's okay. I already made the windows. They walked out of the courthouse hand in hand, a man who lost everything to find what truly mattered, a woman who found the courage to trust again, and a girl who once asked where she could buy a dad and ended up with something priceless. A family. Family isn't always defined by blood sometimes. It's a choice. A choice to stay, to love, and to protect when it matters most. Sometimes the people we walk away from are the very ones who can heal us. And sometimes, the smallest voice asking for love can awaken the biggest change in us.